What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm going to talk about the new studio album by Roger Waters, Is This the Life We Really Want? Okay, so this is the fifth studio album by Roger Waters, who is probably most known for being in Pink Floyd, one of my all-time favorite bands, easily. This is actually his first studio album in 25 years, the last one being Amused to Death. And honestly, I'm really surprised by how much I like this one. I never really got too much into his solo material, mostly just stuck with what he did with Pink Floyd. But I figured since this was the first album in a really long time, I'd definitely give it a listen, and I've had this thing on repeat all week. Waters just sounds so inspired, revitalized. The lyrics are so timely and reflective of what's going on in society. And the music is really the most Pink Floyd sounding he's been in a long time, from what I've heard. It definitely comes off to me like a good mix of The Wall and more so Animals, which is one of my personal favorite records by Pink Floyd, so I was really excited to hear that kind of sound going on there. You hear it with, the way the bass grooves kind of work, but also with some of the production, some of the effects on the vocals. You'll hear that in some of the songs, and I have some more examples of that later on as we dive into the tracks themselves. But it seems, though, that Waters, despite not having recorded any new music in a while, has been touring quite a lot. And he's been doing The Wall in full and a lot of Pink Floyd stuff, and it definitely seems to have rubbed off onto this record. It definitely fits in with that kind of feel and that kind of sound they had going on. For example, diving right into it, Deja Vu. The first real track on the album, it starts off with When We Were Young, which is just this kind of noisy little intro that kind of builds up with like a ticking clock before fading into Deja Vu. And once the vocals come in and the acoustic guitar strumming, it sounds a lot like Pigs on the Wing from Animals, but not totally ripping it off. One of the first things that hit me about this album as I was listening was the lyrical content. Deja Vu is a cool example of just the timeliness and the politically charged aspect of Waters' lyrics on this album. He starts off a verse with, if I were God, and here's, things he could have possibly changed as God, but then it moves into something else in the later verses, and now it's if I were a drone. And he kind of describes flying through the sky, and, has mechanical eyes and parts, and the way the music is flowing, it feels like you're flying along with it. And it has more of like a lighter, more beautiful sound to it, but really the darkness of the lyrics take hold, and there's an explosion type sound, and you realize what he's getting at with it, and it kind of comes up again throughout the record in different songs. Really, a lot of the problems we had with drone attacks, and it came up in the Obama administration quite a lot, and how, innocent people were getting hit by these things. And Waters really isn't afraid to dive in on that in this album. Just a note, music-wise, the middle of that song, Deja Vu, it breaks down into this acoustic part, and there's this piano line that goes over top of it, and it really is spectacular. But the politically charged lyrics continue. A good example is Picture That, which is definitely one of my favorite songs on the album. That's one that really reminds me of Animals as well. It starts off a little slower, like some of the tracks we've heard so far, before going into this groovy bass line and some upbeat drumming that really gets things kicking. And Waters seems to be commenting on the Trump administration here. He says, picture a leader with no fucking brains. And later in the album you hear clips of Trump talking, bragging about how he's won and things like that. So it's safe to say that Picture That is about him as well. What I thought was cool on that line in particular, there's an echo on the vocals, and they repeat over and over, and that definitely reminds me of old Pink Floyd as well. But overall, that's a really good song, definitely one of my favorites on here. Another highlight for me is the title track, Is This the Life We Really Want? Which now turning things more onto the listener, I felt like. He had addressed some political problems so far in multiple presidential administrations, and now it really turns in on you. And he's reflecting on the society we live in now and questioning, is this what we really want? Because he's saying you can ask that question because you can fix that question. There's a line about, how this is a democracy and we have a say here. And then later in the song, he goes into this cool little section. The vocals get very low, almost speaking like, but still have a melody to them, where he starts out all of us, and he's listing different races and religions and professions and different classes of people. And despite how different they all seem, he really lumps everyone into the same category and questions why, we all sit silently by as these leaders, do whatever they want. And, he's questioning, is this the life we want? He's questioning why we haven't done more about it, and if we will do more about it. So while things are kind of grim, I think it also has a bit of an uplifting aspect to it as well, and I found that pretty interesting. And just something else that I picked up on in that song, that long section where he's kind of listing the different types of people he's addressing here. He does it in a very cool rhythmic pattern. It's just, I can't quite put my finger on how to describe it, but it just has this kind of poetic and cool rhythmic vibe to it that I just really like, and I found that throughout the album. Just the way he's singing the verses and the choruses and stuff like that really resonates with me as I'm listening. So that song transitions right into Bird in a Gale, which is this spacey, jammy, psychedelic kind of sounding track, which I thought was really cool. Harkens back to Pink Floyd again, and then also I like the fact that it flowed right from one song to another. I always used to like that about Pink Floyd albums, is how they have a flow to them, and there's not really any interruption between tracks. It's kind of like you should be listening to it all the way straight through, as opposed to listening to random tracks here and there. And that I really appreciated. This was a pretty cool song, something different to throw in the middle of the album and change things up. Moving on to another standout track for me, Smell the Roses. It's the first one I heard from the album, and that really surprised me because it just screams Pink Floyd. Very reminiscent of, Have a Cigar or things like that. Definitely more of a fun song, I guess fun, over the course of a pretty serious album. The lyrics aren't so on the nose here, just a little more general, but it's cool because, it's focusing more on playing with the fun instrumentals, that reminiscent of like a funkier, groovy Pink Floyd type stuff. One thing that it did make me think, and then I noticed more throughout the album listening to it again and again, if I had a problem with this album, it would be that songs like Smell the Roses, or maybe even Picture That, they do make you miss David Gilmour a bit. There's certain moments where you're just waiting for a Gilmour-type solo to just come in and shred. And it doesn't totally take away from the album, but it kind of just makes you think, what if? What it could have sounded like if they had teamed up, if this was a proper Pink Floyd album. So it doesn't ruin anything for me, but it definitely sounds like something's missing at times because, you have these Pink Floyd sounding songs, and it's missing that key component to it. It doesn't totally distract from the album for me. I think the instrumentals are really fantastic on this album. The lyrical content is really interesting, really great. It's definitely good for multiple listens because you pick up on some more stuff every time you listen, I think. And it's just nice to hear Waters just so inspired. His voice at times sounds a little worn with age, but I think that actually works really well with the album. It adds a whole nother emotional side to it. And it just sounds like he's going all in on these lyrics, on the vocals, on the album. So overall, definitely one of my favorite albums of the year so far. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. So yeah, that's it for this review. You could check out the channel for more album reviews. I'm looking to do a couple videos a week. Got some more album reviews coming, maybe some more vinyl videos. So yeah, we'll see what happens. So if you like the video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.